I am realizing now that I should have thought about how I was going to start this.
How about welcome?
That's okay. All right, fine. Welcome to everyone who is listening, I suppose. I'm here. I'm Damon Jensen Heitman. And who else is here?
Rose Koepp.
And that's it. Nobody else. This is Study Time with Rose. Rose, you, as you know, are the Director of Christian Education at First Presbyterian Church, Hastings, Nebraska.
That's what my name tag says.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
Yep.
And you, does it really have, it can't possibly have all those words
No, it does not have all those words on it.
It's too many words.
Yes.
And you are also doing what? That's relevant to this specific podcast.
I am also currently attending seminary, which I suppose makes me a seminarian. So we'll add that to my very long name tag.
Mm-hmm. Are you in care of someone?
I am.
Is that the term that they use?
Under care, I think is what they say.
Under care?
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
So we should probably get into the weeds of that.
And that has to do with the ordination process.
Right.
Which is technically separate than the seminary.
Right.
The seminary, anybody can go to seminary.
Correct.
And they don't need to be going through an ordination process
Right.
for a denomination.
Right.
They could just go and get the degree if that's what they wanted. And some folks do that. But, okay, so you are in seminary, in theory, headed towards ordination.
Correct.
Or at least for now.
Yeah.
Okay. And so I thought that it might be interesting for us to sit down on a fairly regular basis while you're going through this and just to have a series of conversations.
Yeah.
Related to the coursework, related to the seminary experience, because I think, well, first of all, I think that it would be interesting to talk about. Mm-hmm. And I think the members of the congregation might find it interesting as well. It's not often that a congregation has a staff member who's around all the time.
Right.
Going through a seminary to be able to get that sort of insight or access to the process.
Yeah.
This congregation has had members go through seminary before, but they, usually when you go to seminary, you're not employed by the church, and you live a long ways away.
Right.
But you are under care of your home congregation.
Correct.
And so it just seems like a unique circumstance and opportunity.
Yeah.
For us to do this. So that's sort of the general idea.
Okay.
And maybe in the next episode, I'll shorten the introduction.
Well, they'll know. They'll be familiar.
Yeah.
And they'll know what's going on then.
And then we'll just say, okay.
And we'll know what's going on then.
So here, we're going. Start now.
There you go.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so my first question that I have is, who are you?
It's a really big question.
Thanks.
I mean, well, I'm Rose. My name's Rose. I am a woman and a mom and a wife and a caregiver and I don't know what else.
I don't know.
I could probably go on for a long time to tell you who I am, but maybe who I am will come across in the rest of our conversation more.
Yeah, I think that it probably will.
That it should. Yeah, absolutely. So I'll leave it at that.
Okay. And why seminary?
It's also kind of a big question.
I know. I'm really good at questions.
Just give me some softballs right off the bat. My list started with what are we doing here and why and where. Those were my first questions on my list.
Okay, so let's do those then.
Oh, sure.
Those might be more
the why, I guess why is kind of the same, but okay. First of all, what are we doing? I'm going to seminary. That's what has been established. Seminary is graduate school. It is graduate level work.
Yes.
It involves Bible classes. It involves pastoral care classes. It involves learning how to read Hebrew and Greek. And
for you it does.
For me it does. Did it not for you?
Nope.
Oh wow, you're so lucky.
I did a semester of Koine Greek in undergrad.
Okay.
Which is like the people's Greek.
Sure.
The common
folk
Greek.
Common folk Greek.
And in the class was sorry, your friend Hannah is texting me, and
Oh, my friend Hannah.
it's distracted me. There were quite a few religion majors in the class.
Sure.
And there were just a handful of other folks who just thought it was interesting.
Okay.
Including one student who was a pre-med.
Interesting.
Yeah. And was taking it because a lot of medical terms are based out of Greek.
Okay.
And so it seemed like an interesting elective for him to take. He was probably the student in the class that I got along with the best. Because religion majors can be a strange
Sure.
lot.
Yeah.
And that was certainly true
Yeah.
where I went. So, but no, my seminary coursework didn't
include
require those sorts of language proficiencies.
Well, for now, it's still a requirement at my school.
And what is your school?
My school is Louisville Presbyterian Theological Seminary, or henceforth known as Louisville Seminary, because that's too many words.
It is, yeah.
Also, Louisville is hard enough to say by itself.
Yeah.
So I don't need to add
LPS.
LPTS.
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 That's still too many.
It's still too many. Yeah. So, it is in Louisville, Kentucky. Why? Why seminary? Okay. So when I was a teenager, I knew that what I wanted to be when I grew up was a director of Christian education, which seems like the nerdiest sentence coming out of my mouth right now, but it's what I knew I wanted to do. You know, some kids want to be doctors and teachers and whatever, and this is what I wanted to do. So, when I graduated from high school, I went to Bible college because that's where you go to get trained to be a director of Christian education.
Sure.
You go to Bible college.
Well, especially because what tradition did you grow up in?
Right. So I grew up in the evangelical tradition. So that was just kind of the path. So the college that I attended had a degree that was children's ministries. Sure. So I was a children's min major. The problem with that is it was an unaccredited school. I couldn't get financial aid, and it was expensive and in Chicago. So I moved to an expensive place and ran out of money very quickly. So I moved back home, and it's a long story, but I ended up becoming a teacher. But I always knew that I wanted to do this kind of work, the work I do now. This is the kind of work that I've always wanted to do. And when I got hired here at First Pres, I think that my teaching degree is really probably, besides my amazing personality, my teaching degree is probably what really sold me to the church, because I have the skills to structure education for children. Like, this is something that I'm capable of doing.
To look at a curriculum and say, this will work, this won't work.
Right.
This is not really age appropriate. From a developmental standpoint.
Yes, exactly. And so these skills, my teaching degree has served me very well, but I do feel like I'm missing certain skills that would, one, make me better at my job, and two, help me have room to grow in my job. So there's only so much you can do. Not to sell myself short, because you can do a lot with kids, but there's only so much you can do with kids, and there's only so much you can do with any one kind of training. And so what I was really starting to feel like I was missing was some of this theological background, and also like pastoral care at training.
Sure.
So seminary just kind of seemed like the most logical step to take next, because I could have just gone online and done a Bible degree and got the theology and the education that way. But I really wanted to focus in on the pastoral care side of things. I feel like that is something that that I just could use some formal education in. So,
is that something that you feel yourself more drawn towards, those sorts of conversations, interactions, or is it something that you feel, I'm like, when I'm in one of those situations, I'm out of my depth, and I need the training?
I feel like
What's
both.
pulling you towards it more?
So initially it was that I'm out of my comfort zone. I need somebody to teach me how to do this thing I don't know how to do.
Yeah.
But I think the longer that I'm serving in a church and working with families on a daily, weekly basis, I find myself more interested in stepping into those conversations. So it's like a little bit of both.
Sure.
Yeah.
That seems like a very extrovert approach to the role
Right? Yes, I will own that.
of director of Christian. But I think those sorts of skills are things that really I mean, those are skills like, that's what we ask our deacons to do, and, is to provide, we don't call it pastoral care, but it's essentially pastoral care, right? Some sort of willingness to be with people when they find themselves in some sort of hardship,
Yeah.
right? Whatever it may be. Okay. Pastoral care. I'm going to write that down and I'm going to circle it.
Why?
I don't know. Let's see if it comes up
There'll be a quiz later.
later. Yeah.
Sure. Okay.
Okay, so that's sort of the big picture of
Yeah.
why seminary. Both sort of it's like in some parts sort of a calling that has been present with you for a long time.
Right.
Right? And also experiencing some new facets of that calling as well. Of like, oh, okay, this is about maybe more than
Right.
what I thought that it was.
It's maybe more than just watching VeggieTales with children, and
Right.
maybe more than just, yeah, definitely.
Yeah. Okay. Cool. Okay, and now tell us, because you're still working here
Right.
at First Pres, but you are taking classes.
Correct.
Just give us the practicalities of how that works.
Sure. Okay, so I am an online student, and the college it's new this year, but the college is offering asynchronous online classes. The seminary. What did I say?
College.
Whatever it is. This institution of education is offering these online. Oh, I'm stuck. Sorry.
Oh, no.
I tried to move my hair and I got stuck on a button. Sorry. They're offering online classes, but this is the first time they've ever done it. So everything is just a little weird right now.
Sure.
We're all my cohort members and I are all feeling this kind of what's going to happen next? What are we supposed to do? So there's this theme of that going on. But for the most part, what I'm doing is I am taking 3 classes. One of them is a 1-credit class, so it's not really a whole class.
Sure.
But I'm taking 3 classes, and every week the professors will open up the week's content, and then it's my responsibility to one class, the professor provides lectures that we watch and can respond to. In real time, we can text or type in answers, and then it'll show up on his end of oh, this student asked this question during this part of the lecture, so then he can respond to it, which is kind of cool. And then we go through all the lectures, and then there's always reading to do, and then discussion boards where we post an answer to something online, and then we have to respond to our classmates online. And then often there are quizzes, and one of my classes has a group project, three group projects actually. So that's been that's been fun to figure out how to do a group project with my new friends who live in Kentucky and Georgia and Florida and wherever else they're from. But so that's kind of what it looks like on school end, on my end, as far as like you said, I'm still working here. I think technically I'm 3/4 time is what my job description says.
What the most recent stewardship letter
Yes.
said.
So, I mean, I come into work just about every day. My kids are in school, and it gives me a chance to get what I need to do done here, and then I can usually just use my office as my study space too. Sure. So, I don't know.
And you're currently, the classes that you're taking are?
I wrote them down so I didn't forget. Torah and the former prophets. So that's like the first 5 books of the Bible and then like the larger prophet books. Okay. Restorative justice and introduction to mentored reflection. In ministry, I think is actually how the whole name of that class, but whatever it is.
That's the sort of like seminar class.
Yes. Yeah. It's like, yes. Mm-hmm. Yep.
That's not probably so much about content.
No.
About sort of, because eventually you'll do some like, you have to like do work hours.
Field education. So yeah, mentored reflection. Introduction to mentored reflection. Oh my gosh, so many words. That class.
Sort of like, what are you learning? How is it affecting how you understand theology in general or yourself, your relationship to the church? Mm-hmm.
It's been a lot of self-reflection, a lot of like, here, consider this idea about self-care and then talk about it with your classmates. So yeah, a lot of self-reflection in that class just to kind of help. Not everyone goes into seminary with a clear view of what they want to do or even what they want out of the program.
Sure.
So, which I do feel like I'm at a bit of an advantage because first of all, I already have a job. I'm not seeking a new job in ministry. I'm not trying to prepare myself for a new job in ministry. I'm just trying to make myself better at what I do. So that takes a lot off of my plate because a lot of my classmates in that class are trying to dig through the weeds of why am I here? How did I end up here? Like God told me to come, so I did, but I don't understand what's next. And I've already worked through all that.
Yeah,
so.
Which is helpful.
Yes, definitely.
Clarity, right? Clarity is always helpful.
Yes.
Well, almost always helpful, I suppose.
Right.
So a traditional seminary experience, you would go and you would be in person for the classes. You may even live on campus, though not always.
Not always, yeah.
Certainly once upon a time, everybody would have pretty much lived on campus, but that probably hasn't really been true for
a while.
20, 30 years.
Yeah.
Something like that would be my guess. But you're doing this sort of online style, which makes seminary possible for you, really. What are things about doing it this way that you are maybe looking forward to or have enjoyed, or you think, oh, this will actually be beneficial to me? And are there things about doing it this way that you think, oh, I wonder if I'm missing something by doing it this way?
Sure. I mean, I feel like I'm missing out on some of the, like relationship building and just connection to my peers. I am a verbal processor, believe it or not. So, weird. So sometimes, I'll watch a lecture and I'll walk away from it thinking, now what in the world was he just talking about? And I don't understand this big concept. And, there are only so many times a day that I feel it appropriate to knock on your door or Greg's door and say, can you explain this to me real quick? Because we all are doing other things and we're busy with.
I mean, I don't care.
But, yeah, there are times when I wish I could, grab a friend after class and say, hey, can we talk about what we just learned and process through that? And the cool thing is I spent 1 week on campus at the beginning of the semester getting to know my cohort, and we took a 1-credit class together during that time. And so I got some phone numbers and kind of figured out who my people might be in my cohort. And we all have a group chat in WhatsApp. And so it's really convenient because we can just, if I need help with a certain class, we just get into that thread and say, hey, has anybody worked on this yet for this class? I need help. And I mean, probably 80% of the time, somebody will say, hey, I'll call you in 10 minutes. And then within 10 minutes, somebody's on FaceTime and we're having a conversation about whatever it was. But, it's not always. And that's a small pocket of people. Sure. So I miss like something I appreciate about undergrad is that, you walk from the class to your dorm and you have all that time to talk about what you just learned in class and process it out loud. And
they're like, oh, and on the way, we'll stop and get a coffee or
exactly.
something.
Yes. So that is something that I feel like I'm missing out on. But like you said, a lot of people most of my cohort members are not living on campus. Even the ones who are there and go to class in person, they don't live on campus.
It'd be pretty much all commuters.
Yeah, exactly. So I think that element might be missing anyway.
Yeah, I think it would still be sort of you would still have to really intentionally seek it out.
Right. Yeah.
I think. There's something about the experience of being in the room together and, hearing the questions live in the room, I think can make a difference. And then you can sort of start to sort out, okay, this person's kind of my person.
Right.
This person, I don't know. An interesting thought.
Right. Right.
Consider that some more, I suppose. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But something that I do appreciate about it, I get to stay here with my support system and with my people. Yeah. And that's really important to me. We moved for my husband Tyler to get his master's degree. We moved to Wichita for 2 years, and that was a really hard time because we didn't have our family, we didn't have our support system, and you make some friends, but it's not the same as being around the people you've known forever, Mm-hmm. And so I'm very fortunate that I do get to stay here in Hastings and continue to work in this job that I love and be around people who are supportive and helpful, and that makes going to school a bit easier.
Do you have any idea what percentage of the student body there are second career folks?
Oh, I'm sure it's a lot.
Right. Over 50%, I imagine.
Oh, yes. I think
75, 80?
So there are 27 students who started this year with me. Mm-hmm. 2 of them are fresh off their undergrad.
Jam.
Everyone else is coming at this way later. Mm-hmm. So I might be the next youngest person at 33.
Yeah.
So, and this is my second career. So yeah, definitely.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Okay. Let's get into some of these other sorts of questions as well. I just have a whole big long list of them. Are there any that seem most interesting to you that you want to start with?
No.
Anything surprise you from your work so far?
I was surprised how quickly we jumped into the weeds. Like I said before, I went to Bible college for a semester, and it was all overview stuff. It was like an overview of the Older Testament, an overview of the history of the Christian church, overview of, I don't know, whatever else. And because it was undergrad, it was a bunch of writing and whatever basic classes that you need. Whereas with seminary, my Torah and former prophets, I kind of assumed that we'd just get in and, the professor's going to talk a little bit about interpretations of the Bible. And then we'd just start reading the books of the Bible, which honestly, reading the Bible has been the do it on your own time back burner assignment.
Sure.
It's instead, I'm going to give you literally 5 hours worth of lectures over hermeneutics and biblical interpretations and all of these other things that words I have to learn and concepts I need to understand because I had never heard of them before. And this is the 10th week of school, and we are 10 weeks deep in whatever that stuff is. So we have spent very little in class or lecturing time talking about the actual content of the Bible.
Sure.
It's how these interpretations are different, or how this specific passage might talk about slavery or whatever, this issue. And now let's look at what the Bible has to say about it. Mm-hmm. It's not let's do a deep dive into Deuteronomy,
Yeah, the text is as often as often not the text.
Right,
as
right.
It is the text.
Yeah.
Right. It reminds me of somebody comes up to Jesus and asks him, "What's the greatest commandment?"
Right.
And he says, "Well, you know your scripture.
Yeah.
What's there in?" And he actually asks, "How do you read?"
Okay.
Like,
Yeah.
how do you read that?
Yeah.
And that's what that focus, like, it's not just the text,
Right,
but
but, like,
also
how do you read
are
it?
we going to read this
Right.
text, right? And how has the text been read, and what might be the problems with that?
Yeah.
Like, what are there's good stuff in it as well, but
Yeah.
yeah, because which is like learning the language also is really focused on this question of like, how are we going to read this
Yeah.
text? It's interesting. Okay, so you just right into the Old Testament.
Yeah.
Is it history? Torah, you said
It's
Torah,
Torah and former prophets.
and former prophets.
So I think we're stopping at Chronicles. Maybe.
I don't know.
You don't know.
You'll find out in a couple weeks.
Right, when we're done.
Semester's got to be almost over.
This week we're working on Judges. Well, I'm working on Judges. He's not going to lecture about Judges, but I'm working on reading and writing a summary of the book of Judges.
Yeah.
So
Because the other thing is, it's what, the 13-week semester? How many
I think
weeks?
it's 14.
14-week
Yeah.
semester.
Yeah.
That's not enough time.
It's not. No, it's really not.
Yeah, to go over all of the Torah and all that sort of stuff. Okay. Anything inspired you from your work so far?
I definitely have loved reading what some of my classmates have written. So on the discussion boards, especially for that, like the mentored reflection class, she'll ask us something to read something and reflect on it and really try to like dive into ourselves. And it's been really fun to watch my classmates like pick apart their own psyches and just be like, here's what apparently my brain thinks. And like, this is what I started writing. And now all of a sudden I think this other thing. And like, that's been really fun for me to read that. Yeah. And it's been kind of inspirational to like see other people have those like huge moments of self-discovery. And, like, I feel like as someone who went through a teacher ed program, I already did a lot of that kind of like digging into yourself, learning about your own biases, understanding how you think, how you, like how you structure your day, like all these different things that help you function better as someone who takes care of other people.
Sure.
I feel like I've already done a lot of that digging, but it's been really just fun to watch other people do that digging. So
yeah, it's interesting how much of the process is self-reflection.
Yeah.
And knowing who you are. And that's like, I hear Greg's talk about that a lot. Talk about pastoral identity.
Sure.
And growing into his own pastoral identity, which I think is part of that process. Of,
Yeah, definitely.
This is who I am. This is my background. This is what has informed my thinking on a particular text, for example. And this is what hasn't informed my thinking on it. And taking all of that in.
Yeah.
Is interesting, certainly. Has anything frustrated you that you want to share from the work so far? Sounded like the group project.
Yeah. The one class that I'm
a
taking
group project that hasn't frustrated anyone.
One of the classes I'm taking is an elective, but no one knew it was an elective because it was just the only other class offered this semester to the online students.
Online, So like not all of the classes are available in this format.
Right. And so I'm taking
if you want to stay on track.
Yeah, you just have to take what they offer. And I don't know that I would have picked it myself.
Sure.
And so it's been a little frustrating. It has, 4 times as much reading as the other classes, and it's something I'm not particularly interested in diving that deeply into.
Right.
So,
which is also like one of the drawbacks to the online.
Yes.
Because if you were just like there hanging out, you would just pick up from like students who were a year in front of you. Like, don't take that class.
Right, exactly.
Or take that class, but try to take it from this person.
Right.
Instead, if you can.
Right.
Those sorts of like little insider things.
Yeah. Yeah. So, I mean, that's been a little frustrating, but I mean, aside from the sheer amount of reading, the work itself isn't that complicated. And maybe that annoys me a little bit too, because it's like I'm doing all this reading to answer such a simple question. And because we're not in person to have these discussions, I just answer the question and then it's done. And then we move on to the next chapters. So that's probably been my most like frustrating thing, I guess. But I'm glad that easier, more simple class is what was paired with Torah and former prophets, because that class has been a lot of work. So it all worked out in the end.
There's a lot of stuff in there.
There's a lot of stuff in there. Yeah, I think on average, my cohort members and I are spending about 10 hours a week on that class, and that's if you speed up the videos while you watch them. So. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean that's the majority of the Bible.
Yeah.
It's probably the biggest chunk of it,
Yeah, I believe it.
right?
Because all the other prophets are pretty short. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So.
Yeah. And the
Yeah.
the Newer Testament's like nothing.
Yeah.
And 4 of the books are about the same thing.
Right.
And like 8 of them are just Paul rambling about stuff,
About all sorts of things.
in my opinion.
Right.
Okay. This could be particular learnings or assertions, perhaps, that you find yourself really agreeing with, or that you find yourself really disagreeing with, or saying, I want to think more about that.
Sure. Yeah, I don't think that. I mean, I'm pretty like quick to make decisions about things. That's something about me. And if I disagree with something, I'm pretty quick to say out loud, "Oh, I don't agree with that," and then I might sit with it for a while. But that hasn't really happened.
Okay.
So that's good. But there have been some things that I've heard that I thought, I didn't know about that. Or that is making me rethink
That's interesting.
something I thought I knew. Well, like you and I were talking about last week, like the timing of when some of these books were written.
Sure.
So last week we were talking about Leviticus and Numbers. Those were the 2 books that we covered last week. And we had been talking about, like, I said I didn't really realize that those books weren't written, you know,
At
the time that they
Yeah.
were happening. Like in my head, I'm thinking like,
the narrative setting
Right.
is different than when it was actually.
yes, exactly. You know, in my head, I'm thinking like Moses is talking and somebody's writing it down, but that's probably not what actually happened. And I didn't go, oh, I disagree with that, because like I'm obviously not a biblical scholar, and I'm going to let somebody smarter than
Right.
me tell me when these books were written. But when you have this preconceived notion of how things fit together and why, it takes some time to wrap your brain around something else. So
Yeah.
I've had some moments like that this semester where it's just like, I had never thought of that in that way. Okay, I'm going to stop and sit with this. It's not that I disagree. I'm also not going to agree with you right yet, but like I have to think about that for a while.
And
you know?
that's all part of the how are we going to read this text.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
And knowing more about how the text came into being affects if this is as much a longed for communal memory, then what does that tell me
Right.
about faith or about the people of God? And what does that tell me about, should I be reading this text literally or
Right.
not literally? And if I'm not going to read it literally, then what does it mean? Then
Right.
where is the truth in it? And there's still truth in it, but yeah, it may take on a different shape or a different form
Yeah.
in some way or another. Yeah.
Big thoughts.
Yep. And I think in some ways, the Older Testament, for those of us who claim Christ, in some ways it's a little bit easier to do that with the Older Testament.
Sure.
It starts, I think, feeling sometimes a little bit trickier when we get into the Newer Testament. And we start thinking about, well, these crucifixion stories really don't line up.
Right.
And we have, it's like the Gospel of John, like Jesus is the Passover lamb, right? And the other three Gospels, like Jesus is celebrating Passover. He's not.
Sure.
And so what difference does that make?
Right.
It's not the same thing. It's not. And what difference does that make? Or we have two different birth narratives.
Right.
One missing birth narrative.
Right.
And one weird theological birth narrative. And what does that mean?
Yeah.
And we put all of the characters in the nativity scene. They don't all show up.
Right. Right.
Depending on which story you're reading.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so what does that mean?
Yeah.
That practice of looking really critically at the text is, can be really eye-opening and opens the text up.
Yeah.
In ways that it wouldn't have been opened up
Definitely.
otherwise.
Yeah.
So, okay, this is my sort of big question.
Okay.
All right, and I even wrote it out.
I see that.
So I thought it was really good. I always felt that the specifics of the course content, I could relearn them if I needed.
Right.
That's why I was buying the books.
Right.
Right. If I really need to know when this letter was written,
I'll look it up.
I can go back and look it up.
Right.
What seemed most important for me to really hang on to or to really get into my mind in some way were the underlying concepts of each course. From your classes, are there any big picture concepts that seem really important to you now, or that may be shifting your understanding or understandings in some way?
I think that kind of building off what we were just talking about, of just this, I told you, my Older Testament, my Torah and Prophets professor has been teaching us about ways of interpreting the Bible, ways of reading things, ways of looking at things that are just so different from some of the stuff that I am used to or was taught as a child or whatever. And just moving forward with an open mind, I guess, to being aware that, whatever I end up settling on of this is kind of my set standard of how I'm going to approach things, if I even have or need that, I don't know. Just being open to the fact that maybe you and I won't read something the same way.
Sure.
And that there's space for that and that that's okay. Like we mentioned earlier that I come from a different faith background. And in that faith background, scripture is held at a really, really high standard.
Yeah.
And you don't question it, because if you question it, then you're questioning God.
Yeah.
So just being aware that not everyone is going to interpret scripture the same way, and being open to this idea of maybe your preconceived notion about this is totally wrong, and that's okay. Yeah. It doesn't mean that you trust the Bible any less, or it doesn't mean that you trust your pastor any less, or it doesn't mean that there's going to be different ways that different people approach this, and that's okay.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and also that all of those perspectives are needed.
Yes, absolutely. Right? Yeah.
If I'm going to hope to have any sort of anything close to a complete understanding of the text,
right, then
I need people who have different perspectives from me I need to hear those perspectives. And because they will have some truth in them.
Right.
Yeah. And if you can put together enough of those little pieces of truth, then you might get something pretty good
Yeah, definitely.
out of there. So yeah, okay. Anything that we didn't cover that you really think that we should have? Oh, I wanted to talk about this, or I think that people might find this particular thing interesting.
No, I think we kind of covered all of our bases between both of our notes.
Okay.
So,
Well, good for us.
yeah, I know, right?
All right.
Sweet.
So semester wraps up.
I think it's the week of December 15th is our last week. But I could be wrong. It could be the week before that.
Yeah. So you have like 4 weeks.
4 or 5, yeah. We actually have class Thanksgiving week. So, which I think is bizarre.
Sure.
But, yeah, so this week and the week after, and then 3 weeks in December maybe.
Okay. Is there a J term? Or
Yes.
Okay.
So there's a J term, and they're offering a small handful of synchronous Zoom classes. So it means I have to be like on the
Always on at the
computer.
same time.
Yeah, which is like only a lot annoying. So it's fine. One of them is just 1 week long. So I'm going to do that one. And it's from 8 to 3 hour time. So I'll just be sitting on my little computer with Zoom on from 8 to 3 for 5 days. Yeah. So it'll be great. And that'll be a week
Imagine
long.
trying to fill that much time.
I know.
As the professor of the course.
When I want to understand like how I don't even know like how we're going to produce work in that time, not in person. I don't know, but the whole class is offered on Zoom. I don't know that anyone, like the idea is like you could be home for the holidays and take the class from your house.
I guess, but it doesn't really seem like you're home for the holidays.
Right. Right?
It's like, yeah, you're home,
Yeah.
but you're not really there
Like,
for the
oh,
holidays.
right. Yeah, so I don't know. It's going to be interesting. I wasn't going to do it, and then Greg said, he's like, you can do anything for 5 days. And I'm like, okay, well, that means that you have to help with Wednesday Night Live. He's like, oh, yeah, we'll take care of it. So heads up. I mean, I'll be done by 3 o'clock.
Great.
So it all works out. But yeah, that week is going to be a lot. But I'm going to take a class called Trauma and Spiritual Care. So
Okay.
who knows?
All right.
It'll be really intense for 5
right.
days. And then in the spring, I'm going to
Yeah.
take 2 classes, Gospels and Acts, and then History of Christian Experience 1. And I'm going to get some field education hours in because a certain pastor of our church is going to be gone for a bit. So
Yeah.
that's you.
They out.
They out. So I'm going to fill in for you and get some hours for school. So
Class is called what?
which class? Oh, that's for field education.
Okay. What was the one before that?
Oh, the
It
one
was
before
history,
that. History of Christian Experience.
History of Christian experience.
I don't know what that means, but it's required.
I wonder what time frame it's set in.
I don't know. It's number 1. There are 2 of them, so it's probably early.
Yeah.
So I figured it'll be a nice little accompany
make
class to Gospels and Acts, because we'll read Acts and then I'll learn about the
Oh,
history of the
early church.
early church. So
That'd be good.
yeah, should be good.
People like that.
Yeah.
Okay, well, our hope, I don't really know what our hope is for
know.
these conversations in terms of frequency.
Right.
Once a month seems pretty reasonable.
Yeah.
If we could maybe do more than that, we'll try, but
Probably they won't be as long as this one in the future, though,
probably not.
because we
I don't
have a
know.
lot of like pre-explaining to do
Yeah,
in this one.
yeah. But I don't know. We might get really into
Yeah, that's true.
like we've got a lot of the big picture stuff out of the way.
Yeah.
Right?
Maybe next time I have a big question, we'll just turn on the mics and then talk about the big question
Yeah.
on the
Yeah.
podcast.
Or we should at least take notes about it.
Yeah,
And then
talk about it again.
yeah, and then come back to it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think anytime like something like that sort of comes up, yeah, make a note of it. We'll just
Yeah.
throw it into a Google Doc.
Sounds great.
Yeah, we can chat about it. So, and maybe it'll be interesting for folks. So. Okay, is that it?
I think that's it.
All right, that's it. Good luck.
Thanks.
Uh,
Maybe we'll have sign-off music someday.
yeah, we'll figure out how to end these episodes
Yeah.
eventually, but not.
But not today.
I'm tired today.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So we just say, okay, bye.
Okay, bye.
Bye.